Hi, welcome to Clay Center Now. I'm Shannon Stark, Director of Clay Center Area Chamber of Commerce, and I'm sitting down today with Randy Rundle, and he's the owner of Fifth Avenue Antique Auto Parts.
Very good.
And he just has a lot of history to share with us today. He's done some really cool projects, invented some cool parts, and has a big interest in antique cars. So we're excited to sit down with you
Welcome.
and learn all about this. So you're from Clay Center?
I'm from Clay Center originally, yep. And I grew up here, you know, and all the things you didn't care about growing up in high school, as you come back to start a business, you realize this is a pretty good place to start.
Yeah.
I moved away and lived in the city for about 10 years, and you realize how expensive it is.
Mm-hmm.
And for what you would pay is 6 months in rent in the city, you could buy a building in Clay Center. So.
And we've gotten to chat a little bit, and a lot of what you do, you work remotely.
Right.
You don't need to be in a big city to have those connections.
Right. I have
And
customers in all 50 states and 21 foreign countries plus Canada. So really Clay Center is pretty ideal as far as location to ship stuff around the world.
yeah, kind of in the center of it all. So
There you go, center
Okay.
of it all.
cool, very cool. So you came back here, and you've been interested in antique cars for a long time, though, way back in high school, grade
Yeah,
school even.
Yeah, grade school and high school, yep. And I learned to drive in a 50 Chevy pickup. So I fixed a lot of those up in high school, and all of them had dead batteries and dim headlights. So like everybody else, I parked on a hill so you knew it would start. And then, you know, when you're that age, you can fix anything. So I
Right.
decided I was going to fix that. So I knew if my truck didn't start, nobody else's did either. So, but it turned out not to be quite as simple as that. But
Yeah. So you came back here to kind of start your business, and you invented the alternator for this antique cars that essentially did that,
Right.
right? And how many years did that take you to?
it took
really-
about 4 years to get it perfected. And I started in about 1983. And in 85, we got one that was done that worked good. Then in 87, I started Fifth Avenue to market those.
Gotcha. So once you got it invented, then you had to.
Market it, and you know, I spent most of my money inventing it, inventing ways that it didn't work. So when you put something together and then you watch it go up in smoke, then you know that's not right.
Right.
So
So you sold it locally first. You kind of got everybody locally that needed it, and
got it, and then so then I knew I had to market it, and I didn't have much money, so I went and I got involved in the Great Race where they drove the old cars cross country. And at that time they were driving 3,000 miles in 2 weeks' time. So I knew my alternator worked. If I could get one of those guys to try it, then I would get some national recognition and good marketing. But that proved to be harder too than I ever imagined.
nobody wanted to try it right
Nobody
away.
wanted to be the first one. But finally, Bud Melby from Seattle, Washington became the first, and then Howard Sharp was parked next to him during the next Great Race in 1990. But he said if that truly worked, everybody would have done that a long time ago.
Right.
But he was
But nobody dedicated 4 years.
nobody
To get
nobody
this
had
to
done
work.
it yet.
Yeah.
So I was the odd man out. And then they gave me a lot of grief because I took modern technology and reversed to backwards. You're supposed to go forwards, not backwards. But I knew the old cars needed help, so Howard became my best spokesman. You know, he's from New York, and they're very opinionated back there. And so if he said it works, it works. So
People listened, and so that was being involved in the Great Race kind of got you.
that got me a lot of
Exposure.
customers, a lot of good exposure. And so I've done that ever since. So this is 2019 was a 32nd year for being in the Great Race.
And you're still working with Howard.
Still working with Howard.
Very cool.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah, 30-year sponsorship with him. So
That's awesome.
he's a pretty neat guy.
Yeah. And so the alternator was your big part that you invented, but you've invented other things.
I have 25 different things I've invented for the old cars. And most of it is just, you know, things to make an old car reliable so you can drive that distance that they drive and not break down. So But what I've learned doing that will work on anybody's antique car or truck or boat or whatever they happen to collect. So,
And you've worked on it just about anything. You said fire trucks and
fire trucks and Chris Craft wooden boats and airport tugs and forklifts and anything you can imagine. So
very cool.
that's the fun part.
Yeah. And one of the cool stories that you have is working with the Queen of England.
I did. The Great Race ended in Canada one year, and the Royal Minister of Transportation got the assignment from the Queen to find their original 50 Cadillac limousine to do the 40th anniversary of the Pan Am Games. So they put an advertisement on BBC television to find it. And a banker in Winnipeg, Canada had it, didn't know it was the Queen's limousine.
Wow.
So they went to him and said, we'll restore that car if you'll let us use it for the Pan Am Games. So he did. So then the Royal Minister of Transportation was at the ending of the Great Race, and he said, the Queen sent me down to find out how those cars are made reliable enough to drive that far, 3,000 miles. So he saw my sticker on an alternator and he called. And I thought it was one of my British customers. They're always pranking me. So I finally said, if you're truly from the palace, send me something on the Queen's letterhead. And I hung up. And then the fax machine went off and it was him. So I fell about 2 inches tall, and I had to call him back and say, nobody calls here from the palace. And so he explained what he wanted. And so that was a 6-month project, but we got it.
And again, you just are able to work remotely, because when I think about cars and working on cars, I think you got to get underneath them and, but you're able to.
Yeah, I've prepped enough of them in the last 30 years that, they all have the same problems and the same solutions, so you can make up a care package and
it's pretty amazing, yeah.
Get it going. So it's fun to do that.
Yeah. And he had to send you mailing. I mean, you had to mail, and that takes time, but he sent you the direct labels.
Yeah, he sent labels from the palace, so all the boxes I sent had that label on there, and they're not supposed to stop in customs. So what would normally take 3 weeks to a month to get, he got in a week.
Wow.
So
it was able to move a little bit quicker, but still.
So don't miss with the Queen's mail.
Yeah, very cool.
So yeah, that was fun.
That's awesome. All right, we'll be right back after this break to learn a little bit more.
Count on our team at Eagle for reliable internet, TV, and phone, because keeping you connected is what we do. Eagle Communications, our community connected. Count on our team at Eagle for business class phone, internet, and technology solutions, because keeping your business connected is what we do. Eagle Communications, our community connected.
Welcome back to Clay Center Now. I'm Shannon Stark with Clay Center Area Chamber of Commerce, and I'm sitting down today with Randy Rundle, owner of Fifth Avenue Antique Auto Parts. And we've already talked about some really cool projects that you've done, but you've also published multiple books.
I have.
You started writing, when did you?
Well, in the early days when I didn't have any money for marketing, I would write technical articles, explain what the problem was and how to fix it. And I would send that to the car magazines, and they would print it because they didn't have to pay somebody to write an article.
Right.
So I got like a 2-page ad for free. So that's how I marketed a lot of stuff. And then as time went on, then you become the expert. So that's the perception. So then as I started writing technical books, then the magazines would call and ask me to write tech articles and do it. So that was kind of a switch to actually get paid for something instead of doing it for free. But so now I have like 11 technical books that I've written, and a lot of it's stuff I learned from the Great Race, and how to prep your old car and make it reliable, fun to drive. So
and just all the experience, like you said, you're now considered the expert. And
they used to say anybody 40 miles from home was an expert. So I guess the further away you are,
the more they think you know.
The more they think you know.
And you actually published most of those.
Yep, self-published them, and they print them next door at the printery. So
very cool. That's a
that
neat.
helps Clay Center out. They get, the books that went out around the world so far. So
yeah, very cool. So not only books that you've written and published, but also you've had some honors of working with some movies, getting those antique cars staged
Yeah,
for the
I've
movies.
done 6 movie projects. The first one was Devil in a Blue Dress with Denzel Washington. And then from there I went, the transportation director at Columbia then told the director at getting ready to film LA Confidential. And, you know, most directors don't like antique cars because they won't start. And you have 150 people on set waiting for this car to go, and so it gets pretty expensive. Then they go over budget and everybody gets cranky. So
Right.
the idea is to make the old car right. And that was easy for me because it was the same thing I did to a great race car,
Right.
to make it reliable. So the word kind of got around, and so that's how you end up doing movies to old cars. So.
Yeah. And again, you're not on set. I mean, you're
Don't have
not.
to be on set, and that was good. The only thing they had trouble paying me because I wasn't in the union, that nobody else could fix their cars, so I was a outside transportation consultant in one. In Devil in a Blue Dress, I was a simple miscellaneous outside expense.
Right.
So that shows you the creative accounting they do on movies.
Yeah. And I mean, that's you've done 6. I mean, that's crazy exposure. That's pretty cool.
It's fun.
And you had the showing of LA Confidential
In Manhattan.
In Manhattan.
And we put one of my customers, we put his Model A car in the movie theater, took the doors off the theater and put it inside. And then the theater sent that into the trade publications, and they got a national marketing award for that. So,
Very cool.
so they were pretty happy.
Yeah. So there was that wasn't the actual car that was in the movie, but
No,
it was a lot like it.
Yeah, just liking this. So again, that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
To do the things they don't normally put cars in movies, but
Right.
in theaters. But
Right.
in fact, the 2 old guys that owned the car, once we got it in the door, they went in and drove around the snack shack and made a lap before they parked. Said, we're never going to get this chance again.
Yeah, that's funny. Let's make a lap before
So,
we
yeah,
park
do a
it.
lap and grab some popcorn, and we're good.
Cool. And then you also did Indiana Jones.
Indiana
That was the
Jones,
one
yeah.
I was more familiar
Yeah, the
with.
Crystal
So
Skull, yeah.
very cool.
So yeah, those are all kind of fun.
And how many cars? I mean, was it just one car that you were?
No, that like in LA Confidential, there was like 5 police cars plus the detective car that Danny DeVito drove. So, you know, when you see him on TV, he looks almost normal size, but when you see him in real life, he's short. He's not very tall, so he's like barely 5 feet. So,
Wow.
but yeah, those were kind of fun to do. Those cars.
Yeah. And then there was the chase in Indiana Jones and how
Jason,
many?
yeah, or through the college. Yep, did those cars, and you know, and I tried to get a cameo thing in the movies, and that didn't work very good. Of course, they're all union, and you have to be in the Screen Actors Guild and stuff. I said, I just want to be the guy on the park bench or the anonymous guy, you know,
Yeah.
like Alfred Hitchcock. And they said, you can't do that unless it's written in a script, and they didn't want to write it in for me, so.
Yeah. And it's probably
Everything's predetermined.
Yeah.
And you know, I said I would do it for free, and they said, well, so would 100 other struggling actors who, you know, can put on a resume that they had an appearance in LA Confidential or Indiana Jones.
Right.
Even if you don't get paid, well, they would.
But
do
you're
it.
like, well, I'm not a struggling actor, so I'm not going to go anywhere with this. But
I just want to do it for fun.
Yeah, just for fun.
But that didn't work. So yeah, everybody gets paid. Everybody has a part in the script, or it doesn't get done.
Yeah.
And when they film scenes, and if there's a Coca-Cola can on the table and Coke didn't pay for that to be in there, then they edit that out. So there's a guy at the end of when the movie's filmed, he spends like up to a month, and he'll go through, and anything that's not paid for gets edited out.
Oh, wow.
Even if it's in there by accident, you know, you just.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a interesting thing.
Yeah. And I'm sure, like, when you were just working on cars and stuff in high school, you never imagined that this is where.
Yeah. You have no idea what, you know, where things end up. And when the Queen called, and I said, that's the last thing I ever would expect.
Imagine,
and
yeah.
I truly didn't believe it. But,
Yeah.
you know, he was a really nice guy. He gets to live at the palace, and he makes all the travel arrangements, you know, for the Queen. But
You would have never imagined that you'd be working with him.
No, but he has a pretty fun job most of the time, except
Yeah.
when things like this come up. He said, I don't know if we'll find this car, but I can't tell the Queen Mom no. So he said, we'll have to do our best. So
Yeah, make it
Yeah.
happen. And you did.
And they got, they go back 100 years in your family to get palace duty. Which you have no criminal anything in your history. And then once you get in the palace, if he wants a ham sandwich at midnight, he just calls downstairs and they bring it up.
He's like royalty.
So
Very cool.
pretty good deal.
Yeah.
He said the only better job there is the royal bagpipe player.
Oh, wow.
He plays at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock during tea time, but he can't play the same song twice in a year. And I said, well, how did you know what he played 6 months ago? He said it isn't worth the risk.
Yeah, to mess up.
So that's what they do.
Crazy.
He has 30-minute gig twice a day.
Pretty cool that you've got some of those connections. We'll be right back after this break to learn more.
At Eagle Marketing Solutions, we believe your advertising should be as unique as your business. Because if it's important to you, it's important to us. Call Eagle today for your customized marketing plan.
Eagle Technology Solutions is the strategic advisor for your IT business needs. Because if it's important to you, it's important to us. Call today, Eagle Technology Solutions. Technology done right.
Welcome back to Clay Center Now. I'm Shannon Stark with Clay Center Area Chamber of Commerce, and I'm sitting down today with Randy Rundle. And we've gotten to learn a lot about your projects and stuff, and you spoke a little bit about the Great Race in our first segment. What exactly is that? What is the Great Race?
That's a time distance race for typically pre-1942 and older cars. And they go, originally went 3,000 miles in 2 weeks. Now they've shortened that up a little. It's about 1,500 miles in a week. But they get a packet of instructions every morning, 30 minutes before they leave. It takes, tells them where to go and when to go, how fast to drive, where to turn. And then they're timed down to 100th of a second to make sure that they're exactly on time, not early, not late. They have 7 hidden checkpoints during the day, and they'll actually videotape them as they go by, so they know down to the 100th of a second. Mentally it's pretty challenging. The first hour of every day is what they call their time route, and they go exactly 1 mile, and it tells them exactly what their seconds should be at the end of that mile. So if your car comes in early or late, you have to figure that correction into everything you do all day long.
Wow.
Then if you go through a railroad crossing, you have to wait on the train, you have to mentally count how much that's costing you, and then you have to make that up somewhere. Stop signs are typically 11 seconds. They're supposed to set at a stop sign for 11, so that's a place to make up some of their time. But they also they're not allowed any time for turns because some of the cars are 1910, some of them are 1940s. So the difference in the braking,
I would say that's a pretty big
span.
difference. Yeah.
So what they do is if your instructions say go 40, and then you see a stop sign, you have to mentally count how long it takes you to go from 40 down to 0 at that stop sign. Then you have to turn around, and if your instructions say go from the stop sign, speed up to 30 miles an hour, then you have to mentally count how long that takes you, then make that correction you have to make that time up somewhere.
And there's a navigator and a driver.
There's a navigator and a driver, and the navigator does the math. They can't use any GPSs, they can't use any cell phones, no calculators, it's all paper and pencil. And then they don't tell them, like when they show a road sign on your directions, it doesn't tell you how far down the road that is, so you have to watch for that. They can't use any odometers on their car, they cover all that up. So mainly it's just, you have to mentally keep track of all the stuff in your head.
Wow.
It's hard.
Yeah. I couldn't do it. No
So
way.
when they sent me to, I made fun of them, so they sent me to navigation school, and I was 20 minutes off in an 8-hour day, and they said stay home. These guys are 3 seconds off in an 8-hour day.
Wow.
So like the car I sponsor every year is a 1916 Hudson, and they won this year. They won in 11, and they won in 15, and they won in 19. And there was 3 cars in the same second.
Wow.
So that's why they timed down to 100th of a second. And his time was actually the best.
And that's Howard
Sharp
that you started working
from
with.
Fairport, New York. Yeah, I've sponsored him since 1989. So this is the 30th year for him. So he's gonna, we've talked about having him come back sometime and do a presentation, because he obviously appreciates all the the friendship we've had over the years. So he's going to come back this winter and do a presentation on the Great Race and tell what his part is and how the Great Race actually works. So you'll have to watch for that.
Yeah.
That'll be a fun thing. It's a rare opportunity to get him to come back from New York. So he's a very busy guy, but he likes Clay Center. He's been here before, and just to kind of tour on the way, and so he's looking forward to it. So.
Yeah. Very cool.
Be good for the whole community.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to learn learn more and all the history.
He's one of his car is 1916, so that's one of the oldest cars in the race.
And has he went through multiple cars? I mean, you've worked on different cars.
He's been working about 32 years trying to figure this out. And it's, he said it's just one of those things, you just got to keep doing it and eventually it'll click.
Has he had different navigators, or has he had?
His son and him have been navigating since he's probably his second year. His son, I think, was probably 12 when he started.
Wow.
And he just said, you got to get Douglas, you have to get this. So.
And the more you practice, the better.
Douglas is pretty sharp too. He's kind of like, he has he can figure things in his head, and he can mentally picture where we're at and where he needs to be, and he can read those instructions and kind of memorize those so he knows what things to pick out and what to do. All the cars start a minute apart, so you can't just follow the guy in front of you. And then, like when they do a maze, if they were at the courthouse here, they'll come from the north and they'll go around counterclockwise around the courthouse, and then they'll go down a couple blocks and turn around and they'll come back and do it counterclockwise. So by being a minute apart, the guy following you, his instructions are saying go clockwise, but he's seen cars going counterclockwise. So then he second guesses himself. Either they're wrong or he's wrong. And the rookies, especially the rookies, will have a terrible time with this. So, but as you get older, you learn, when you practice more, you know that you have to ignore what everybody else is doing. You have to read the direction after this one to make sure you're on the right.
It is a mental game.
So besides all the calculation stuff, then they do that to kind of mess with your mind. So we've got a lot of rookies that way. Yeah. Because they just try and confuse them, and it usually works.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sitting down with us today. We look forward to hearing when Howard's going to be in town.
Yeah.
We'll share that on our Clay Center Area Chamber of Commerce Facebook page when Howard's going to be in town talking about the Great Race that Randy's worked with him for 30 years. So
he's good, and the entry fee is $7,000, and he collected $50,000, so that's pretty good.
That's pretty good winning.
Pretty good week's work.
You had a part in that, so Well, thank you for joining us today, and thank you, Randy, for letting us.
Thanks for having me.
Into your shop, which is really neat, downtown Clay Center, 5th Avenue, antique auto parts. So thanks for joining us today.